World War II erupted in 1939, engulfing Europe and eventually the entire world in a conflict of unprecedented scale. The reasons for this devastating war are complex and deeply rooted in the events of the preceding decades, but its roots stretched back to the end of World War I, a conflict that reshaped the global landscape and sowed the seeds of future discord. The aftermath of that war played a crucial role in setting the stage for the Second World War. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to secure peace, instead left Germany resentful, humiliated, and economically strained. The harsh terms imposed on Germany created a fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. Dictators like Adolf Hitler in Germany capitalized on this resentment, promising to restore national pride and power. Benito Mussolini in Italy similarly exploited nationalistic sentiments, establishing a fascist regime that glorified the state and suppressed individual liberties. And military leaders in Japan rose to power, driven by expansionist ambitions and a desire to dominate East Asia. These leaders, fueled by aggressive ideologies, promised national strength and expansion, appealing to populations yearning for stability and prosperity. Hitler defied the treaty by openly rebuilding Germany's military, a clear violation of international agreements and a sign of his aggressive intentions. He further challenged the established order by occupying the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone, without facing significant opposition from other European powers. Then, in a blatant act of aggression, he annexed Austria in 1938, expanding Germany's territory and influence. Emboldened by his earlier successes, he demanded parts of Czechoslovakia, specifically the Sudetenland, an area with a significant German-speaking population. Britain and France, desperate to avoid another large-scale conflict, pursued a policy of appeasement, hoping to satisfy Hitler's demands and maintain peace. But Hitler's ambitions grew unchecked, and his appetite for conquest proved insatiable. On September 1, 1939, the world watched in horror as Germany invaded Poland, shattering the fragile peace and igniting the flames of global war. The invasion was carried out using blitzkrieg tactics, swift, overwhelming attacks that combined air power, armored vehicles, and infantry to rapidly overwhelm the enemy. Britain and France, finally recognizing the futility of appeasement, declared war on Germany 2 days later, fulfilling their commitment to defend Poland. This marked the official start of World War II, a conflict that would soon engulf nations across the globe. Soon, more countries joined the conflict, drawn in by alliances, ideologies, and the pursuit of their own national interests. And the world was plunged into war once again, a war far more devastating and widespread than the one that preceded it. The stage was set for a global struggle that would last 6 long and agonizing years, claiming the lives of millions and reshaping the world order. The world would never be the same, forever scarred by the horrors of war and the immense sacrifices made in the fight against tyranny. The Second World War was a conflict that engulfed the globe, dividing nations into 2 main alliances, the Axis and the Allies. These 2 opposing forces clashed in a struggle for global dominance. The Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, were united by expansionist ambitions and authoritarian ideologies. Germany, the driving force behind the Axis, was led by the infamous Adolf Hitler, whose vision of a 1,000-year Reich fueled aggressive expansion. Italy, under the leadership of Benito Mussolini, sought to recreate the Roman Empire. Japan, ruled in the name of Emperor Hirohito, aimed to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. While Hirohito was the symbolic head of state, military leaders like Hideki Tojo were the ones wielding real power in Japan, dictating its aggressive foreign policy. These countries sought to dominate large parts of the world, driven by a desire for resources, territory, and political influence. To solidify their alliance and coordinate their expansionist efforts, they signed pacts to support each other. The Allies initially included Britain, standing defiant against the Axis onslaught, France and Poland, the first nation to fall victim to Nazi aggression. Winston Churchill became Britain's Prime Minister in 1940, a pivotal moment in the war. He rallied the British people, leading the nation through its darkest hours with unwavering resolve. France fell early, succumbing to the speed and power of the German blitzkrieg, but Charles de Gaulle, refusing to accept defeat, led the Free French in exile, continuing the fight from abroad. In 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, launching Operation Barbarossa. This act of aggression broke a non-aggression pact that had previously existed between the two nations. Joseph Stalin then brought the Soviet Union into the Allied camp, forming a powerful alliance against the Axis. This opened a massive Eastern Front, a theater of brutal and unrelenting warfare. The United States, initially neutral, was led by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who recognized the growing threat posed by the Axis powers. America officially joined the war after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, a day that would live in infamy. In response to the attack, Germany and Italy soon declared war on the USA, further escalating the conflict. This act made the conflict truly global, with battles raging across multiple continents and oceans. It's important to remember that China had already been fighting Japan for years in Asia, a conflict that predated the European War. As the war progressed, the alliances shifted and expanded, with new nations joining the fight on both sides. This drawing in nations from every continent, transforming World War II into a truly global struggle for freedom and survival. The early war years saw rapid and stunning Axis victories across Europe and beyond. The world watched in disbelief as nation after nation fell before the seemingly unstoppable might of the Axis powers. Germany's Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, overwhelmed Poland with a swiftness and brutality that shocked the world. This new form of warfare, characterized by rapid tank advances and coordinated air support, proved devastatingly effective. The same fate befell France, a nation considered one of Europe's great powers. The speed of France's collapse was a major blow to the Allied cause. With France defeated, Britain was left to stand alone against the Nazi war machine, facing the daunting prospect of invasion. The Battle of Britain was fought fiercely in the skies above England, with the Royal Air Force valiantly defending against relentless and devastating German bombing raids, protecting their homeland from invasion. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, a new and even more brutal chapter of the war was about to unfold. Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, invading the Soviet Union in 1941, opening up a vast and bloody new front in the war. The brutal Battle of Stalingrad became a crucial turning point on the Eastern Front. Soviet forces, at immense cost, surrounded and ultimately defeated the German Sixth Army, decisively shifting the momentum of the war in the East. Simultaneously, in the Pacific, a new conflict was erupting that would draw the United States into the global war. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States of America into the global conflict, transforming the balance of power. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, Japan quickly seized vast swathes of territory across Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Ocean, establishing a formidable empire. However, the tide began to turn with the pivotal Battle of Midway in 1942. This was a crucial and decisive US victory, effectively halting Japan's seemingly unstoppable advance across the Pacific. Following Midway, the Allies began a strategy of island hopping, systematically retaking territory from Japan, inching closer to the Japanese mainland. Back in Europe, the Allies launched the long-awaited D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944, storming the heavily fortified beaches of Normandy in France, marking the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany, in what remains the largest seaborne invasion in world history. After months of fierce and bloody fighting, France was finally liberated from Nazi occupation, and the combined Allied forces relentlessly pushed eastward toward the heart of Germany. In a desperate attempt to reverse their fortunes, Germany launched its last major offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, but it ultimately failed to achieve its objectives. With the Soviet Red Army advancing from the east and the Western Allies closing in from the west, the Allies began to close in on Berlin, signaling that the final collapse of the Third Reich and the war's end in Europe drew undeniably near. World War II changed daily life for millions. Rationing and air raids became routine. Bombings destroyed neighborhoods. Women filled factory jobs and children were evacuated from cities. The Holocaust was the war's darkest chapter. Millions of Jews and other groups were murdered by the Nazis. Resistance movements sprang up in occupied countries, risking everything to fight back. The war displaced millions, creating a refugee crisis that lasted long after the fighting stopped. Families were separated and entire communities were destroyed. The scars of war ran deep, shaping societies for generations. By 1945, Germany was collapsing. Allied and Soviet forces closed in on Berlin. Hitler committed suicide as Soviet troops entered the city. Germany surrendered on May 7, 1945. VE Day marked victory in Europe, but the war raged on in the Pacific. Japan fought fiercely, refusing to surrender. The US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The devastation forced Japan to surrender on August 15, VJ Day. The official surrender was signed on September 2, 1945. World War II was finally over. The war left over 60 million dead and cities in ruins. Economies were shattered and millions were homeless. To prevent future wars, the United Nations was founded in 1945, promoting peace and human rights. The horrors of the Holocaust led to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The US and Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, but their rivalry sparked the Cold War. Europe was divided and Germany was split in two. The war accelerated the end of colonial empires as independence movements swept Africa and Asia. New nations emerged, and the world map was redrawn. The legacy of World War II shaped the modern world. Remembering World War II honors the millions who suffered and died. Their sacrifices remind us of the value of peace and the dangers of unchecked power. The Holocaust warns us against hatred and intolerance. Never again must be our promise. The war's lessons about international cooperation and human rights remain vital today. Its legacy shapes our world, from global alliances to the fight against discrimination. Understanding World War II helps us build a better, more peaceful future. That is why we must always remember this war.